Okay. Okay. So I will start our first class. Okay. On research methodology. Okay. I will introduce myself first. Okay. So my name is Ahmad Safwan A. Rashid. Okay. And my phone number is 01972012279. And my email is ahmadsafwan@utm.my. Okay. Okay, a little bit background on me. Okay. Okay. So I have graduated from the University of Sheffield in 2011. Okay. So this is my former supervisor, okay, Dr. Hurt, and this is my external, okay, from Manchester University, Dr. Crick, and this is Dr. Cripps, the internal examiner, okay, and this is my also former supervisor, okay, Dr. Black. Okay, so this photo is captured right after my oral examinations. Okay, uh, it took about 4 hours. Okay, and I managed to answer all the questions. Okay, and then I have awarded the PhD. Okay, after I submitted my corrections. Okay. Uh, I have actually 4 kids at the moment. Okay. So during my graduated day, okay, I have 3 kids. Okay. So this is the eldest one. Now is 15 years old. Okay. This is the second. Now is 11 years old. Sorry, 13 years old. And there are a daughter. Okay. Which is at that moment still not delivered yet. Okay. So and the last one is 5 years old. Okay. Okay. So actually my background is on geotechnical engineering. Okay. So this is the topic of my thesis actually. Okay. So I'm studying on the behavior of weak soil reinforced with soil columns formed by the deep mixing methods. Okay. So I guess some of you know about the deep mixing methods. Okay, this is the method used to improvise soft soil problems. Okay. So, however, for my thesis, for my study, I only investigated the behavior by using what we call a small physical modeling. Okay. So this is the setup. Okay. In the laboratory scale. Okay. So I prepare the what we call as the ground model inside the soil, inside the chamber. Okay. And then we apply. I have applied loads. Okay, on the soft improvement soil, and then I use the digital camera. Okay, to capture the movement. Okay. Then I have come up with this kind of what we call as failure mechanism. Okay, so actually this is a typical Prandtl mechanism. Okay, for a shallow foundations. So although the Prandtl has proved it in 1924, okay, so I guess this is the most accurate methods that could validate what we call as the Prandtl mechanism. Okay, so it means that after almost 90 years, okay, so we have the tools to validate the Prandtl mechanism. Okay. So this is the what we call as the failure the column failure behavior. okay, after has been loaded by using these driving units. Okay. So it took about me 4 years to complete this study. Okay. So I will share some of my experience, okay, in this lecture, okay, in order to guide you to do a research, especially on your master project. Okay. Okay. So this is the course outcome, okay, where we want for the student, okay, to have a comprehensive understanding on all aspects of research, okay, a guide on how to conduct research in a systematic way, a guide to solve and analyze data and result, and the last one is a guide on writing techniques and presentation skills. Okay. So we have actually 8 topics, okay, where I will lecture on the topic of first and second, introduction and problem formulations. Okay, the rest will be lecture by Dr. Nur Hisham and Professor Nur Hazilan. Okay. While for your assessment, okay, by the end of this course, okay, you need to prepare, okay, for your chapters 1 to 3, okay, whereby for the chapter 1 is on the introduction, okay, chapter 2 is on your literature review, okay, and the chapter 3 is on the methodology. Okay. So you will be assessed based on your writing and your also on your understanding on your proposed study. If I'm not mistaken, you have a you will be there will be a final your chapter 1 to 3 uh is your mark, okay, for your final. Okay, so please prepare carefully. Okay. So for my part, I will teach you on how to prepare for the introduction part, okay, which is the chapter 1. Okay, while for the chapter 2, chapter 3, okay, I left it to Dr. Hisham and Prof. Hazilan. Okay. Any question? Hello? Is there any question?
No.
No. Okay. So I will discuss on the introduction part.
Sorry,
This is the
doctor.
first
You
part.
mean
Okay.
will we write 3 chapters? 1 chapters
Yes.
introduction and 2 chapter 2 literature review and chapter
Yes.
3 methodology, right?
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So your grade will be rely on your writing of all these chapters. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Doctor, hi.
Ah,
How about the topic
okay.
of the research?
Have you already have your supervisor?
No, belum ada
Oh,
lagi.
belum ada. Are you in second semester or first semester?
Second semester.
I guess you should have your supervisor for your for your master research topic,
I,
is it? Master research
I see. All right,
project.
I will check out again. Thanks.
Okay. Have you registered for the master research project subject?
Not yet. Are we going to register for the project first before this research methodology?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not
I'm
sure.
not too sure. Yeah. It's okay. I
Mm,
will find out. Thank you, doctor.
Okay.
Doctor, sorry, can I ask you?
Okay.
Yes, about topic, can I choose topic from my choose? Because
Actually, you need to discuss with your supervisor, okay,
I
for your
don't have
master
a
thesis
supervisor
project.
yet, because I don't have take a project, master project yet.
Okay. Is it this semester you will take for your master project?
No,
Okay.
because the administration tell us about you should take first research methodology, and then next semester will be take MS project or
Okay.
project. Yes,
So sorry, how many subject for this semester?
this semester I will take only research methodology because I then second semester now.
Okay. Sorry, how about the rest? How many subject for this semester?
Doctor, only 2 subject, Doctor, because of this short semester
Okay.
for Principle of Engineering Management and also Research Methodology. After we
Okay.
pass both this subject, baru kita akan register for master project. So that's why
Oh,
all of
master
us tak
project.
ada lagi supervisor.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I will discuss with Dr. Hisham because he is
Alright.
the subject coordinator for research methodology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, might
Okay,
be
Doctor,
we
thank you.
change to what we call a technical paper, a technical paper. Okay. But for the technical paper also you need to have introduction part, literature review, and methodology. Okay. In that case, I will share some example on the technical paper. Okay. But you need to have a thought what will be your future master project topic. Okay. Yeah, for example, if you're under geotechnic, okay. So yeah, because actually the supervisor will be assigned by the coordinator. So it's not simply that you can just ask the supervisor to ask any lecturer to be your supervisor. Okay. But I guess you already know you have your what it calls your major, is it under geotechnic, structure, or highway? How many from geotechnic?
Our class is from Sarjana Pengurusan Project.
Oh, construction management.
Yes, project management.
Project management. Okay.
And structural engineering, Doctor.
Structural engineering. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Civil engineering.
Okay.
Doctor, we don't really know that many lecturers because we are part-time student from KL.
Yes.
So our class
Okay.
is from home, so we haven't met them. Yeah.
But you're already second semester or first semester?
This is our second.
Second. Okay. How about from the previous last semester?
From previous semester, we had 3 subjects. So every subjects there were like 2 to 3 lecturers.
Okay. Okay, so regarding assessment, let me discuss with Dr. Noh Hisham first. Okay. Okay, but for my part, I will discuss on the introduction chapter. Okay, so the rest literature review or methodology will be discussed by Dr. Hisham and Prof. Hajilan. Okay. So it's okay. Yeah, there will be an assignment or a project. Okay. So from last semester, we have asked the student to prepare for the proposal. Okay. So at that time, all the students have already have their supervisor. Okay. Okay, let me discuss with Dr. Hisham first. Okay. And then I will let you know later. Okay. But definitely there will be an assessment. Okay. Might be you need to prepare for your proposal. Then your mark will rely on your proposal. Okay, I will get
So Doctor,
with you after discuss with Dr. Hisham. Okay, sorry,
the
Azim.
topic open-ended, Doctor. I mean, the topics.
Yes, but it should have an element of research.
Okay, that related with our future master project.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, correct.
So for example, if you are at the you are dealing with any, for example, like any problems in your site, in your office, and then you have a method to solve it. Okay. So it can be uh your topic for your master project as well. Okay. But it should have an element of research. Okay. It's not straightforward where you solve the problem. Okay. But you should have some a systematic way how to solve the problems. Okay. Okay. So the best is related to your daily work. Okay. So there's because you are dealing with that kind of problems. Okay. Yeah, I mean in engineering, in civil engineering problems. Okay. So I will let you know later. Okay, once I have discussed with Dr. Hisham. Okay. So I just want to mention that there are assessment for this topic or for this course. Okay. So you'll be provided with a grade. Okay. So, however, due to you did not have supervisor yet, so I will discuss with Dr. Hisham first. Okay.
Yes, doctor, we will await you. Thank you, doctor.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay. So, okay. So for my part, what is research? Okay. So I will give some example and then yeah, I need some response from you. Okay. It's just a simple question. Okay. Okay. So okay, this is for case number 1. Okay. So Encik Samad prepare a paper on computer usage in secondary school. After reviewing literature on the subject available in his university library and called it a piece of research. So what is your comment? So he did some review, okay, and then he called this is a piece of research. Any guess? Can we consider this is a research?
Cannot.
No, sir.
Okay, so yeah, it is a part of research, but we cannot stated that this is a research, okay, a full research. Okay, so for the case number 2, okay, Encik Ali says that he has researched and completed a document which gives information about each of his students, okay, their SPM result, their parents' incomes, and the distance of their schools from the home or from home. Okay. So there are several variables here, okay, which is the SPM result, their parents' income, and the distance from the home, from home. Okay. So this also is not a full research. Okay. So it's all about of data gathering. Okay. Because he has collect all the informations. Okay. Under several variety of variable. Okay. So but he just do the data collection without doing any analysis. Actually. So we also could not consider this is a research. Okay, but it have an element of research. Okay. So Mr. Wilson participated in a workshop on curriculum development and prepare what he calls a research report on the curriculum for building technicians. So he did this through a literature survey on the subject and by discussing with the participants of the workshops. Okay. So this is also we call as a data collection, okay, where he collect a data, okay, from a survey, okay. But by do this kind of data collections, okay, we could not also consider a full research. Okay. Okay, none of the above cases can be classified under the name of research. So although they have what we call as a they did the review, okay, they do the survey, okay, and they also collect all the informations, okay. So we still could not consider it is a full research. Okay. So okay, this is the case number 4. Okay. So a general manager of a car producing company was concerned with the complaints received from the car user that the car they produce has some problems with rattling sound at the dashboard and the rear passenger seat after a few thousand kilometers of driving. Okay. Based on the complaint by the by the customer, okay. So he looked on the problems, okay, and then identify the problems, okay, and then he carry out several things, okay, to solve the problems, okay. So he obtained the information from the company worker, okay, to identify the various factors influencing the problems, okay. Then he formulated the problems and generate guesses, okay, what we call as hypothesis. Later on, he construct checklists and obtain requisite information from a representative sample of cars. Okay. He used all the data, okay, and analyze it, okay. And later on, he's interpret the result in the light of his hypothesis and come to the conclusions. Okay. Okay. So this what we call as a systematic scientific approach, okay, where we have the problem and then we identify the problems, okay, and then we create what we call as a hypothesis, okay. So from there we strategize what method should be used, okay. So once we obtain all the data, we do the analysis, okay. Based on the result, we come up with our own interpretations, okay, and then we do the conclusions. Okay, so the element is this, the element of the research is should have this kind of scientific, a systematic scientific approach. Okay, from the identifications, okay, until to the conclusions. Okay, so that is research is all about. Okay. So case 4 is an example of research, okay, because the researcher went through a sequence of steps. Okay, so I have highlighted there a sequence of steps which were in order and those is systematic. Okay, the researcher did not just jump at the conclusions, but use a scientific methods of inquiry in reaching at conclusions. Okay, so that's why a researcher, okay, should have a thought, okay, on what is the main problems, okay. So to identify the problems, okay, either but from the customer, for example, for the case number 4, okay, or okay, we can get it from the journal or from the scientific manuscript, okay. So from there, we can identify what is the limitation from the previous study, okay. Then we try to solve, okay, or try to introduce the solutions, okay, to solve the problem that has not been solved by the previous researcher. Okay. So that is very important to do a review, okay, based from a journal or based from any manuscript, scientific manuscripts, okay, to identify what we call as research gap. Okay. Then we need to have what we call a feasible methods, okay, to solve the problems. Okay. So for example, from my experience, okay, so I need to carry out for the laboratory test, okay. I need to make sure that the testing is feasible, okay, and then I need to use what we call as any instruments, okay, to measure the output, okay. So at the same time, I need to make sure that all the methods are calibrated, okay, and then from the laboratory result, okay, I use the numerical tools, okay, to validate the result from the experimental, okay, and then I analyze the result and come up with what we call as a relationship, okay, from all the result, okay. Then the last thing is to come with the conclusions, okay. So that is the research is all about, okay. So that's why in your dissertations, okay, you will have at least 5 chapters, okay. The first chapter is on your introduction, okay, where you need to table all your problems, okay, and what is the limitations of your problem, okay, what is the scope of your study, okay, because we have a limited of time, okay, you cannot solve all the problems, okay, and what is the objective of your study, okay, and what is the benefit from your research, okay. So that is the chapter 1. While for the chapter 2, okay, you need to list all the previous study, okay, and then you need to have a critical comment, okay, from the previous uh, uh, finding, okay, Then you need to have a summary, okay, where the summary explains, okay, what is the limitation from the previous study, okay, and what is your current interest, okay, okay. And on the chapter 3, okay, we may discuss on the method that you use, okay. Yeah, if you're doing a survey, okay, so you need to discuss what type of survey that you will use, okay, because I'm not a social science background, okay. So how many targeted respondents, okay, and how to validate your result, okay. Uh, for uh, for for any students that use any numerical tools, for example, okay, so he need to discuss on the tools or on the numerical tools that he use, okay. So for example, if he use yeah, because my background is on geotechnic, okay, so for example he use Plexis, okay, so he need to discuss, okay, on how the Plexis could solve the problems, okay. So he need to show, okay, how the Plexis work, okay, and the best way to show is by using the flow chart, okay. So that is on the methodology part, okay. While for the chapter 4, okay, you only discuss on the result, okay. So based, for example, based on your survey study, okay, so you come up with all the result, okay. So at the end, if you want to have a relationship, okay, between several parameter or variable, okay, so you need to use what we call as a statistical approach or methods, okay. While for the chapter 5, normally we come up with the conclusions, where the conclusion answer all the objective that you have listed in your chapter 1, okay. And the last thing, you need to have a recommendation section, okay, because in the chapter 1 you already mentioned on your limitations, okay, so the limitation should be counter on your recommendations, okay. So for example, in chapter 1 you say that you are not investigate for the problems related to the older people. So on the recommendations, you just recommend that this study also should be investigate for the elder people, okay. So that is your dissertation content, okay. Minimum 5 chapters, and the number of pages, if I'm not mistaken, it should minimum is 80 pages, okay. And the last concern is on your reference, okay. So please make sure that you check your reference, although some of the students use what we call as EndNotes, okay, whatever software, okay, but please do not rely 100% on that software, okay. Okay, so that is the research as shown in case number 4, okay. So the meaning of the research is a carefully and systematic process of inquiry to find answer to problems of interest. Okay. To do research is to investigate the problem systematically, carefully, and thoroughly. Okay. Research is an organized, systematic, database, critical scientific inquiry or investigations into a specific problem undertaken with the objective of finding answer or solution to it. Okay, so I've highlighted some important words here. Okay, so systematic process. Okay, so investigate the problems. Okay, database. Okay, so you need to put in the table forms. Okay, so you also need to critique your finding, okay, and also critique the previous literature. Okay, so research is an endeavor or effort to discover answer to intellectual and practical problems through the application of scientific methods. Okay, research is a systemized effort to gain new knowledge. Research is a systematic process of collecting and analyzing information in order to increase our understanding of the phenomenon about which we are concerned or interest. Okay. Although you are doing master by project, okay, you still need to have the element of research in your dissertation. Okay. Yeah, for example, one of my students, he worked with MRT. Okay? So he deal with what we call as a problems on ball pile, okay, rock socketed ball pile, okay. So he has come up with his own analysis, okay, and then propose a new what we call as equations for the rock socketed ball pile, okay. Then he managed to publish his work, okay, on a journal, okay, which is the ICE journal, International Civil Engineering Journal, okay, which is located in United Kingdom, okay. So means that if you have a problem in your office, okay, so you can use all the data, okay, okay, but please please make sure that you have the element of research, okay. The element of research is for example, you need to review, okay, from any previous manuscript or journal, okay, and then try to relate what that you are doing now, okay, is not been fully investigated from the previous researcher, okay. From there, you come up with your own analysis, okay, and then propose any new relations, okay, then do your conclusions, okay. So it's not a very straightforward um, uh, what we call as procedure, okay. So I will try to teach you, okay, how to relate or to put any element of research, okay, in your master by project subject. Okay? Okay, research is the process of finding solution to a problems, to a thorough study and analysis of the situational factors. Okay, research provide the need information that guides manager to make informed decisions to successfully deal with problems. The information provided could be the result of a careful analysis of data gathered firsthand or of the data that are already available. Okay. So you also can use a secondary data. Okay, no problems. Okay. but you know how to analyze it carefully. Okay. Yeah, for example, if you have any previous data from your company, okay, and you are not supervising it in at the site, okay, so you can use that secondary data, okay, and try to come up with your own analysis, okay, and then your own conclusions, okay. So that is also allowed, okay, for you to do for your master project subject, okay. Yeah, for example, okay, um, my student, okay, use a secondary data, okay, from his friend company, okay. So uh, he did the analysis, okay, and then come up with his own relationship, okay. Compare the relationship with the previous literature, okay, and then come up with his own conclusions, okay. So that also could consider as research, okay. So although you are using any secondary data, okay, you can use it, but you need to analyze and come up with your own conclusions. Okay. So the objective of the research is to discover answer, okay, through the application of scientific procedure. Okay. So we have a several type of research here. Okay. Okay. For example, if you want to explore or formulate any new problems, okay, so we call as an exploratory or formulative research. Okay. If you want to portray accurately the characteristic of a particular individual, situation, or a group, okay, we call as a descriptive research, where we study on the behavior. Okay, so this is more related to social science research. So to determine the frequency with which something occur or with which it is associated with something else, so we call as diagnostic research. Okay. So to test a hypothesis of a causal relationships between variables, okay, they call as hypothesis testing research. The goal of research is to solve the problems of interest. Okay, the problem may be of a critical or practical in nature. Okay. The scientific community tend to be more interested in research that push the frontier of knowledge, which the aim of the research should be describe, predict, explain, interpret, or demystify, clarify phenomena. Okay. So normally this is related to a PhD study, okay, where we come up with a very comprehensive work, okay, because in PhD we just focus on one issue, okay, then we spend a minimum at least 3 years, okay, to come up with the conclusions, okay. But for your master project, okay, so you may tackle one or two problems, okay, and then analyze it and put your own conclusions, okay. So that also consider as a research, okay. So systematic research is systematic because it follows certain steps that are logical in order. Okay, the steps are understanding the nature of problems to be studied and identifying the related area of knowledge. Okay. Reviewing literature to understand how others have approached or deal with the problems. Okay. For me, it's very important, okay, to have a very comprehensive reviewing process. Okay. So you need to get any journal or scientific manuscripts, okay, from the library, okay, or from the Google, okay, or whatever search engine that you can use, okay, and then carefully read all the finding, okay, especially on the method that's been used, okay, okay, and try to find any gaps, okay, or the limitation from the previous, okay. So for your master project case, I guess at least you need to have 10 to 30 or 10 to 20 journals that you need to read, okay, which is related to your problems, okay. So collecting data in an organized and controlled manner so as to arrive at valid decisions, okay. Analyzing data appropriate to the problems, and the last one is drawing conclusion and making generalizations, okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps here, okay. So problem identification, review information, data collection, analysis, and drawing conclusions. Okay. So follow scientific methods. Okay, this means that it is make an integrated use of inductive and deductive reasoning. Okay, this is very useful for explaining and predicting phenomena. Okay, the basic assumption of the scientific method is that every effect has a cause. Okay? So the approach is to use the inductive and deductive, okay, reasoning. Okay, so inductive is more related to using a particular example to reach a general conclusion. So it means that we go for a very basic and then we come up with the general conclusions. While the deductive is by using a general problems and then come up with the any particular or specific problems. So it means that we need to use both, either inductive or deductive. Okay. So for example, the inductive approach is based on the observations. Okay, this is just a general example. Okay, elephant depends on water to exist. Okay, then observe a pattern. All the observed animal depends on water to exist. Okay, then the hypothesis is all biological life depends on water to exist. Okay? So it means that from a specific problems, then we come up with the a wide view conclusions. Okay. So deductive start with existing theory. Okay, so it means that from the general view, okay, all biological depends on water to exist. Okay, formulate hypothesis based on the existing theory. All land mammals depends on water to exist. Okay, so collect data to test the hypothesis. Study all land mammals species to see if they depends on water. The last one, analyze the result. Does the data reject or support the hypothesis? Okay, all land mammals species depend on water. Okay, so in the research we need to use both inductive and deductive approach. Okay. So we have problems that we can see as a general. Okay, then we narrow down where we try to solve any specific problems related to the general view. Okay, or we do a study on a very specific problems. Okay, then we come up with conclusions that could represent for the other cases. Okay, so we can use both, either inductive or deductive. Okay, okay, so again I have to explain on this part. Okay, so you can try to read it Okay. Okay. So this process continues in this manner, and therefore research becomes cyclic and dynamic. Okay. Okay. So casual. Okay. Scientific method of inquiry. Okay. So it have this kind of cycle. Okay. So casual observation, existing structure of knowledge, okay, operationally scientific testing situations, okay, implication of the hypothesis, okay, generation of the hypothesis. Okay, so research type. There are many ways of classifying research. Okay, one way is to classify it by functions. Okay, so basic of pure research is motivated by curiosity and aims to advance theoretical knowledge. Okay, so we call it a fundamental study. Okay, so we have applied research is concerned with applying scientific theory to real life problems. Okay, normally, for us as a civil engineer, normally we use the applied research. Okay. Although research nature activities are although research activities are classified according to different nature, they will overlap and merge from one into the other. Okay. So, for example, although we use the we apply we carry out for the applied research. Okay. But we still need the theoretical knowledge. Okay. To answer for any uh, result that we have obtained from this applied research. Okay, so we need to know or to have a good understanding on the theoretical knowledge. Okay, okay, research can be divided into 5 categories. Okay, so we have basic, pure, okay, or fundamental research. Okay, exploratory research, applied research, development research, design research. Okay, so for the first one, okay, fundamental research, okay, refer to original investigation for the advancement of the scientific knowledge that do not have the specific objective application for practical problems. Okay, normally, this is deal with what we call it a chemistry, okay, or physics, okay, when they just study on the fundamental issue. Okay, so for the application will be carried out by any researcher which is related to engineering disciplines. Okay, it is devoted to achieving a fuller knowledge or understanding rather than practical application of the subject under study. Okay, so for the civil engineering, I guess less study has been carried out on this fundamental research. Okay, except if you are doing, for example, for the geotechnical discipline. Okay, normally if we carry out for a full laboratory test, okay, for example a triaxial test, okay, uh, to study on the critical state, okay, to come up with the constitutive model, okay, so that we can consider as a fundamental research. Okay, but most of the study are related to the applied research. Okay, so it is experimental theoretical work undertaken primarily to acquire new knowledge of the underlying foundations of phenomena and observable facts with or without any particular immediate application or use in view. Okay, so it's not subjected to time restraint and it is open-ended. Okay, so that is for the basic fundamental research. Okay, exploratory research aims to clarify concepts and problems closely aligned to underlying basic research in which there is an objective. It is open-ended, looking for something which might form the basis for a successful research project development. Okay. So we try to explore something new, okay, based on the fundamental knowledge. Okay. So then we try to explore this approach, okay, in on this theory on the research. Okay. So the example is research of for a new drug and examine the biological effect of a new range of chemical material. Okay. So that is the exploratory research. Okay. I guess similar like the COVID vaccine. Okay. So they keep exploring. Okay. Uh, and then they come up with the conclusion that, okay, there are several vaccine that can be used, okay, to cure the patients. Okay. So applied research. Okay. So this is directly toward the practical applications. Okay. So it involves the application of basic knowledge for the solution of a particular problem, the creation and evaluation of new concept of components, but not development for operational use. Okay. Okay. Then from the applied research, okay, so we can move to the development research. Okay. So this is more related to produce something. Okay. So for example, material, device, systems, including design, development of prototypes and process. Okay. So I have a student, a PhD student, okay, where he come up with a prototype of slope monitoring systems. Okay. But before he come up with the prototype, he need to test it in the laboratory scale. Okay. And then install it at the site. Okay. And then try to monitor either the system is work or not. Okay. So after 2 years of um, um, install at the site, so we come up with the conclusion that the system it work well. Okay, and then could predict for any soil movement. Okay, so he already passed his PhD. Okay, and then we try to use this prototype, okay, uh, to observe or to monitor any slope. Okay, especially in UTM first. Okay. Okay. So development research, product development, process development. Okay, this is a part of the development research. Okay, might be you can be a rich person. Okay, so if you come up with your new device, okay, so you can patent it. Okay, so my student has tried to have his own copyright. Okay, so in IP, intellectual properties. Okay, the highest is the patent. Okay, the second lowest is the what we call as utility innovations. Okay, where we do some innovations. Okay, from any previous methods. Okay, but it's not truly a patent. To have a patent, because patent is a very new product and has its own novelty. Okay, so but the cost to have this kind of called as UI, utility innovation, so we need to pay around 8 or 7,000 or to 8,000. Okay, to secure for the UI. Okay, so that is for the development research. Okay, so design research directly at the cost performance improvement to exist product, process or system. Okay, recombination, modification, testing of system using existing knowledge or opening new markets for existing product. Okay, so This is more related to parts and component research. Okay. Okay, so this is slightly similar to what we have discussed previously. Okay, so I guess you can do some reading more on this part. Okay, descriptive and analytical research. Okay. Apply in fundamental research, the comparison between applied and fundamental. Okay. Quantitative and qualitative. Okay, so we have a qualitative and also we have quantitative. Okay, so normally qualitative is more related to social science study. Okay, where they study on the behavior, the quality. Okay, while for the quantitative normally related to any disciplines which is related to and applied. Okay, for example, under geotechnique, under structural or material material engineering, okay, which is related to the quantitative study. Okay, conceptual versus empirical. Okay, so empirical is depends on any experience or observation, or you come up with your own relation based on your result and based on the previous result. Okay, so then you gather all the information and then come up with your own relations. Okay. Okay, on time research confined to a single time periods. Okay. Which is yeah, we study, for example, we study on the monsoon season, for example. Okay. So there is an on time research. Okay, longitudinal research is more related to over several time periods. Okay, for example, we study on the cause of the rain due to 1 year seasons. Okay, then state research. Okay, so when this is more related to clinical research. Experimental research is normally related to person that carry out the study at lab base. Okay. Okay, this is a little bit similar with what I have discussed previously on the exploratory. Okay. Historical is more related to study on the past event. Okay. Okay. So that is research is all about. Okay. Then in your chapter 1, okay, so you need to have what we call as a research objective. Okay. And the objective should be is measurable. Okay, so you can measure. Okay, so normally the term that we use is to determine, okay, to establish. Okay, because it should have element of it can be measured. Okay. So research objective are a specific component of the research problems, okay, that you will be working to answer or complete in order to answer the overall research problems. Okay, so at least you need to have 3 research objectives, okay, in your study. Okay, the objective refer to the questions to be answered through the study. Okay, they indicate what we are trying to get from the study or expected result or the outcome of the study. Okay. So research studies should be clear and achievable as they are directly assist in answering the research problems. Okay, so it should be clear and tangible, can be measured. Okay, the objective may be specific in the form of either statements or question. Normally we put in the statement. Okay, generally they are written as a statement using the word to discover, to determine, okay, to establish or to verify, to compare. Okay, so that is the common terms that use, okay, for the research objective. Okay, so at least you need to have 3. Okay, so you need to identify what is your research objective, because at the end on your conclusion part or on chapter 5, okay, you may answer all the research objective, okay, that you have stated in your chapter 1. And this should be achievable, okay. So how to achieve it? It's related to your chapter 3, which is on your methodology part, okay. Okay, on your introduction chapter as well, you need to have a scope of study and limitations, okay. So this is very important, okay, because based on your topic or your title, okay, so yeah, normally your title will represent the whole of your study, okay, but you still have the limitations, okay, or you have what you want to focus, okay. So your study scopes, okay, is to represent what is your interest and your focus, okay, on a very specific issue, and could not provide an answer within a certain limitation of time, okay. So you have a limitation of time, okay. You could not address all the problems, okay. So in that case, you should have the scope and scope of study and limitation sections. Okay, normally we call it scope of study. Okay, should be addressed in the dissertation of thesis. Okay, then recommendation will be suggested on the conclusion chapter. Okay, so based on your limitation, it should be you should have a recommendation part on your last chapter. Okay, to address to come up with recommendations, okay, in order to come the limitation on your study. Okay, so this is also very important. So please make sure that you have these sections in your chapter 1. Okay. So research background and benefits. Okay, provide an overview for the research problems and the benefit gains from this research. So this is also should be highlighted in your chapter 1. Okay, so what is your research background? Okay, and what is the benefits? Okay, so normally the subsection called as a research background. Okay, the research problem usually gain from the limitation of previous work. Okay, so that's why it's very important for you to have a very good literature review section. Okay, from there you can know what is the limitation from the previous work. Okay, so should be highlighted in the introduction chapter or sections. Okay, so you should have a sections or chapter, subchapter, okay, in your chapter 1, which is discussed on the research background and benefits. Okay, what's the benefit gain from this research? Okay. 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 A hypothesis is an assumption about relation because between variables. Okay. So normally in research we may study on several variables. Okay. So we can make some assumption from that. Okay. So that is what we call as a hypothesis. Hypothesis can be defined as a logical guesses relationship between two or more variables expressed in the form of a testable statement. Okay, so the relationship are conjecture on the basis of the network of association established in the theoretical framework formulated for the research study. Okay, for example, a simple hypothesis that we can make: A is increased when B is decreased. Okay, so A and B is a variable. Okay, so if B is decreased, A will be increased. Okay, so there is a first or preliminary hypothesis that we can make. Okay, and it should base on any previous literature, for example. Okay, so what is variable? Anything that can vary can be considered as a variable. Okay, a variable is anything that can take on differing or varying values, or we call it a parameter. Okay, so some we can we came across what we call a parametric study. Okay, so they study on different variable or parameter. Okay, for example, each production unit, okay, absenteeism, okay, sex, motivation, income, height, weight. Okay, so that we call as a variable. Okay. The value can differ at various time for the same object or person, or at the same time for different object or person. Okay. So for example, for association study, okay, they will look on they can category in different variable, for example, male or female, okay, age, okay, uh, income, for example, okay, the salary, okay. So from there they can come up with their conclusions or finding. Okay. So a variable is a characteristic that takes on two or more value, whereas an attribute is specific value on variable. Okay, qualitative. Okay. For example, the variable is sex or gender, okay, and has two attributes, male or females. Okay. The variable agreement has 5 attributes: strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. Okay. So normally these terms will be is normally used by the social science researcher, especially when they do the survey. Okay, so they have 5 attributes. Okay, so we just need to tick, okay, which one that related to the respondents. Okay. Okay, so this is the type of variable. Okay, explanatory or extraneous. Okay, which is and then extraneous is not affect any dependent variable. Okay. So we have dependent versus independent variable. Okay, normally when so normally in laboratory problems, okay, we have a dependent and independence. Okay, so that's why when we draw a when we draw what we call as we draw a graph. Okay, so normally the x is independent while the y is dependent. Okay. Okay. Okay, so that is the variable or parameter. Okay, so in order to identify which parameter is dependent, okay, so we may use this kind of approach. Okay. Okay, we may use this kind of approach where we call as a dimensional analysis. Okay. So this is a very interesting topic, okay, where you might use it for your master project, okay, in identifying any relevant parameter to be used in your project. Okay. So dimensional analysis is a method for deducing elements of the form of a theoretical relationship from consideration of the variable and parameter that make up that relationship. Okay. So we try to get all the element which is related to the problems based on the theoretical relationship. Okay. So dimension analysis of problem then leads to a reduction in the number of variables that must be studied in order to understand the problems. Okay. So later on, once we have deduced all the elements, okay, so we can focus on what element that we want to use. So from there, we can reduce the number of the variable in our study. Okay. So the last thing is to create dimensionally homogeneous equation whose form does not depends on the units of measurements. Okay. So yeah, we already know that in our measurement, okay, we have several units, okay, to represent for any number. For example, meter, or stress, kilonewtons, okay. So the idea of this dimensional analysis is to create what we call as a dimensionally homogeneous, which is non-units, okay, or non-dimensional. Okay. Okay, governing equation cannot just be plucked from the air. Okay, they must come from an underlying inside the phenomenon that is being modeled. Okay, so it should be based on the theoretical formula or knowledge. Okay, so the theory of dimensional analysis is encapsulated in the Buckingham Phi Theorems. Okay, they call it as Buckingham Phi Theorems. Okay, if there are n variable in the problems, okay, and this variable contain m primary dimensions, for example, MLT, okay, which is mass, length times, okay, the equation relating all the variable will have n minus m dimensionless groups. Okay, I will explain later. Okay, so this is just a general explanations on the dimensional analysis. Okay. Okay, Buckingham refer to this group as phi problems. Okay, the phi groups must be independent of each other, and no one group should be formed by multiplying together power of other groups. Okay, so this method offer the advantage of being more simple than, okay, so this method is more simple than any other method that called as solving simultaneous equations for obtaining the value of the indice. Okay, so there are several methods where we can get what we call as dimensionless approach. Okay, but this dimensional analysis is more easy way to be used. Okay, so in this method of solving the equation, there are two conditions. Okay, each of the fundamental dimension must appear in at least one of the m variables. Okay, it must not be possible to form a dimensionless group from one of the variable within a recurring set. Okay, a recurring set is a number of variables forming a dimensionless. Okay, I guess I will explain based on the example later. Okay, from there you can get what is the meanings of this A and B. Okay. Okay, fundamental quantity must commonly employ based on Newton's second law, which which states that the rate of change in momentum of a body is proportional to the applied force. Okay, so this is the concept of the Newton's second law, which is we call as FMA. Okay, so the basis is on the Newton's second law. Okay, so we have the F, M, L, and T. Okay, where F is the force, M is the dimension, mass, L is the length, T is the times. Okay, so from there we call this is a primary dimensions. Okay, so the equation relate four dimensions, which is F, M, L, T. Okay, So therefore, L and T is the fundamental dimensions required for geometry and kinematics. Okay. The third fundamental dimension in dynamics can be either force or mass. Okay. So that is the dynamic F and S. Okay. So due to the F and S is under dynamics dimension. So at the end, okay, either we can use a combination of MLT or FLT. Okay. So we have two options there. Okay. But for me, I prefer to use the FLT because we are dealing a lot on force rather than mass itself. Okay. So however, in this word, since mass is the fundamental physical quantity, the latter are employed in deriving the dimensionless value of the equation. So it depends. So if the problem is more related to mass, okay, so it's better to use MLT. But in geotechnics, okay, we are dealing a lot of force, so that's why I prefer to use FLT. Okay. It's okay. I will show you an example. Okay. I guess from the example, you can understand what is the dimensional analysis is all about. Okay. So later on, you can go through again on this note. Okay. Okay. So selection of the relevant independent parameter can be quite difficult. The resolution of the related problem requires sufficient experience. Okay, so you need to be well trained, okay, to use this approach. Okay, but it's very beneficial, okay, in order to choose the important parameter for your study later on. Okay. Okay, so I go for some example here, but all the example is related to the geotechnique. Okay, I hope you still remember when you learn from your undergraduate level. Okay. 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 The problem is slope in cohesive soil. Okay. So when we look on the textbook, okay, so we have identified several important parameter, okay, in order to obtain the factor safety value. Okay, so this what we call as the output. Okay. Okay, so this is the output. Okay, so for the input for this type of problems, okay, so we can identify as H, which is the height, okay, D is the depth from the toe to hard layer. Okay, theta is the slope angle, Cu is the strength of the soil, okay, under shear strength, while gamma is the unit weight of the soil. Okay. So due to this problem is purely cohesive soil, okay, so there are no phi value. Okay, so no phi value in these problems. Okay, so we have identified 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5 input and 1 outputs. Okay, so we list all the important parameter here. Okay, so we have Fs, H, theta, Cu, gamma, and D. So the number is equal to 6. So this represent as n. Okay, so when you go through back on the notes, you will find that they have mentioned as n as the parameter or variable. Okay. So from each variable, okay, so we need to identify what is the primary dimensions, which is related to F, L, T. Okay. So that is the what we call as a primary dimensions. Okay. So FLT we can consider as a units. Okay. For example, factor safety doesn't have any units. Okay. So definitely we consider or we put as a 1. Okay, because it doesn't have any units. Okay. H is meter and H is related to length. Okay. So we put L to represent the H, okay, in this part. Okay. Theta doesn't have any units because theta is rely on the degree. Okay. So degree doesn't related to the Newton's second law. So we put as a 1. Okay. Cu is the undrained shear strength. So it is related to stress. Okay. Because the Cu is kilonewton per meter square. Okay. So for this case, that's why I prefer to use FLT. Okay. Because F is equivalent to force. So we can choose F for the primary dimensions. Okay. And then M square is length square. Okay. So that is for the FL power by -2. Okay. While the unit weight, it is like a density, okay, which is kilonewton over meter cube. Okay. So in that case, F over L power by 3. Okay. So to put it in this case, we put at F L power by -3. Okay. And the last is the L to represent the D. Okay. So for the FLT, the maximum M can be equal to 3. Okay. So we need to count how many FLT, okay, in this row. Okay. So we have L, F, and it does not have any T. Okay. So we consider M is equal to 2. Okay. So N minus with M, which is 6 minus with 2. So we need to create 4 dimensionless equations. Okay. So to begin with, we start with any parameter from this section, okay, where Fs is a dimensionless, okay. Theta also is dimensionless, okay. So we need to create 2 more dimensionless equation. Okay. So to make it easy, okay, D over H is the third equation, okay, where D is meter, H is meter, meter over meter we consider as dimensionless. Okay. And the rest is by using the balance equations or the balance parameter that has not been used before. Okay, so we slash Fs, theta, D, and H. Okay. However, we need to choose, okay, either we want to use H or D, okay, in order to have the last dimensionless equations. Okay. So in this case, the author used H, okay, to come up with the last dimensionless equations. Okay. So Cu over gamma H is the last parameter or the last dimensionless equation. Okay. So that is the approach. Okay. So from this study, okay, we know what is the important parameter. Okay. Then we come up with these dimensionless equations. Okay. So what is the significance of this dimensionless equation? Okay. So we call this as a Taylor. Okay, this is Taylor chart. Okay. Normally being used in slope stability design. Okay. So it is a universal chart, okay, that could be used, okay, by any researcher, okay, in order to determine what we call as the factor safety of the soil, okay. So if you are interested to know on this Taylor chart, so you can look on any reference book, okay. So because we can determine the factor safety, okay, by using this kind of chart. Okay, so it is a dimensionless approach where D over H, Cu over gamma H, and also the theta. Okay, so it is applicable for any slope which is less than 53 degree. Okay, so this is what we call limitations. Okay, we could not provide all what we call as all we could not provide our study have the limitation, so we cannot cater for any for this case they cannot cater for any slope greater than 53. Okay. Okay, so if anyone want to look or to solve any problem for the slope greater than 53, okay, he can use the second Taylor chart, okay, which is not represent or present in this slide. Okay, there is another approach by Taylor to cater for for a greater or for a steeper slope. Okay, so that is for the first approach. Okay, for the slope in cohesive soil. Okay, so this is another approach. Okay, by using the four cone methods. Okay, where they use the four cone, okay, to determine the penetration depth, okay, and at the same time to determine what is the strength of the soil, okay. So this cone have its own attributes, okay, which is the mass of the cone, okay, and also the angle they call as apex angle, okay. So from this problem, okay, they come up with four parameter, okay, which is D. W is actually M times G, okay. Cu is the strength of the soil, while alpha is the angle of the cone, okay. So the number of the parameter is 4, okay. Later on, okay, they come for the primary dimensions, FLT, and then they found that the number of the the primary dimension is 2, okay. So two dimensionless equations should be derived, okay, and definitely alpha is the first dimensionless, while the combination of D, W, and Cu is the second dimensionless equations, okay. So this is the second dimensionless equations, okay. So actually this approach has been used by Rowe and Woods, okay, from the Oxford University, okay, to study on the use of the four cone device in order to determine the liquid limit of the soil. Okay. So it's very simple approach, but it's very significant towards the knowledge of soil classifications. Okay. I also use this kind of approach, okay, when I did my master project, okay, by introducing a different type of cone, okay, to determine the liquid limit value. Okay. Okay, so this is the bearing capacity study. Okay, the PU is the outcome or the outputs. Okay, the rest is the input. L, D, B, C, phi, gamma. Okay, so 7 parameter, 2 primary dimensions, and definitely we should derive 5 dimensionless equations. Okay. So what is the importance of these dimensionless equations? Okay. So if you came across for any literature review, okay, and then you have identified that none of the study is concerns on the length of the what we call as of the footing. Okay, so you can put your interest, okay, by deriving this dimensionless equations, okay, by having L as the significant parameter in your dimensionless equations. Okay, so for example, B you can change to L. Okay, this D over B you can change to L. Okay, so because you want to look more detail, okay, what will happen if you play around with the D, with the L value. Okay, so that is the idea why they introducing this kind of dimensionless equations or dimensionless approach. Okay, so the last one is the under the vertical cut. Okay, the same approach where the vertical cut is a part of the slope stability. Okay, so the Fs is the output while the rest is the input. So we have n number of 5, m number of 2, and we should derive 3 dimensionless equations. Okay, so from there we have Fs is a dimensionless, alpha is also the dimensionless. So the rest is from C, unit weight, and also H. Okay, so that is the idea of the dimensionless equations. Okay, so you may use it for your master project problems. Okay, but definitely it's only suitable for quantitative study, not a qualitative study, because it is related to units. Okay, so it should under a quantitative study. Okay. Okay, so I have discussed on the variable, okay, which is related to the hypothesis. Okay, so you can read on these notes, okay, on the hypothesis, okay, because this is more on the explanations only. Okay. Okay, problem versus hypothesis. Hypothesis is assumption that can be tested and can be proved to be a right or wrong. Okay, so a problem is very broad question which cannot be directly tested. Okay, a problem can be scientifically investigated after converting it into a form of hypothesis. Okay, so that's different between hypothesis and problems. So hypothesis is more a way on how to identify the problems scientifically. Okay. Okay, characteristic of a hypothesis. Okay, conceptual clarity. Okay, it should be clear and precise, and basically it is based on the theoretical knowledge. Okay, specifically, consistently, testability, expectancy. Okay, specificity, objectively. Okay, but in a chapter one, it is not required for you to have a hypothesis section. Okay, but the hypothesis is the way how could we identify the problem scientifically. Okay, no need for you to have a section on hypothesis. Characteristic of hypothesis. Okay, theoretically relevant, availability of techniques. Okay, so the source of hypothesis. Okay, so this is some of the source of a hypothesis. But for me, normally, we may rely on the previous study, okay, a review of similar study, okay, or based on the existing theory, okay. So this is much more relevant, okay, rather than we do a discussion with the colleague, okay. Okay, so this is because at the end on our literature review part, okay, so we need to cite the reference, okay, because the discussion is not very solid sources, okay, in the scientific study, okay. Okay, type. Okay, I guess you can go through on this part. Okay, I provide the example as well. Okay. 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 Okay, then we move to the form of relationship. Okay, we have a non-directional. Okay, directional. Okay, so means that it may produce what we call as a linear and non-linear approach. Okay. So for example, if you carry out for a laboratory test, whatever result that you obtain, okay, so you need to justify or provide the answer. Okay. So there is no true or false, okay, with your result, okay. But if you can provide the answer, okay, based on the theory, based on the previous study, okay, that is the way how we uh, verify the relationship. Okay. Okay. So they have a positive or negative. Okay. If X increase, Y increase, positive. X increase, Y decrease, negative. Okay. So there are no relations where X doesn't Y change, Y doesn't change. Okay. There is a relation between X and Y. Okay. Okay, normally positive when X increase, Y increase, there is a positive. Okay, negative is if we go a different way. Okay. Okay. So the function of the hypothesis, okay, is stated here. Provide direction of the study. Okay, determine the data needs. Okay, so you can use the approach of the dimensionless analysis. Okay, specific source of data. Okay, so hypothesis is just a guess. Okay, but it rely on the theoretical knowledge. Okay, so major stage of work. For conducting research, a researcher, investigator goes through 4 major stages of work: preparing research proposal, organizing and conducting research, writing a research report, evaluating research. Okay. So in preparing research proposal, describe why of the research, what, okay, So a question about which research is seeking answer, hypothesis, how of research work. Okay, again, it should rely on the journal or scientific manuscript or any reference book, okay, which is rely on the theoretical knowledge as well. Okay. So organizing and conducting researcher conduct research following methodology or plan, okay. You can make small deviations if necessary, okay, so there will be no problems there, okay. Writing research report, researcher writes report which outline the finding of study and its implications, okay. Evaluating research in order to find any gaps or weakness in study, okay. Help in modifying the study and improving research in future, okay. And then will be assessed by an expert on that particular field, okay. So you may have assessment presentations, or you may have oral examinations, or we call as a viva sessions, okay. So capability requirement to undertake work, okay, selecting and defining research problem, describing methodology of research, collecting data, analyzing data, and interpreting the data, okay. Selecting and defining research problems, carry out literature review related to the problems, make thorough diagnosis to specific problems, research questions, or hypothesis. Okay, describing methodology. Okay, select appropriate research design. Okay, normally you should come up with a flowchart explanations. Okay, so for example, sorry, okay, this is your flowchart. Okay, how the methodology will go during your study, okay. So then you can have a several variable here, okay. A, B, okay, for example, okay, and then come up with the relationship, for example, okay, and then come with the conclusions or finding, okay. So that is the methodology is all about. Okay, either you want to use whatever instruments, survey instruments, laboratory, field work. So you need to state it in the flowchart diagrams. Okay. Okay, data collection, develop capability of administering instruments, recording data, scoring and tabulating for analysis. Okay. So if yeah, it's better to represent in a chart, okay, because you can get the behavior, you can get, for example, for laboratory test, you can get the young modelers, okay, rather than you put in a table form, okay. Okay, so this is the right way. So if you already explained in the chart, no need to explain in a table, okay. But if you want to explain in table, you just explain on what we call as on the ultimate value only, okay, or on, for example, E, the young modulus value, the ultimate value QU, okay. So that is will be fine. Or you can get, for example, for the geotechnical student, they call it as a bearing capacity, okay. So that is fine if you want to present in table, okay. So do not duplicate the table and the graph on the same chapter, okay. So analyzing data interpretation of result, okay, you can use either statistical methods or whatever methods, okay. For example, to analyze your data, okay. Okay, criteria of a good research: propose clearly defined, research process detailed, research design thoroughly planned, high ethical standard apply, limitation frankly revealed, okay. So that's why limitation is very important, because when somebody go through on your thesis, okay, they will not ask more than that because you already put your limitation. Okay. Adequate analysis for decision maker needs finding presentation, okay, unambiguously, conclusion justified. Okay. Research experience reflected. Quality for good systematic, logical, empirical. Empirical is based on experienced person. Okay. Replicable, okay, it can be tested by another researcher. Creative use of multiple methods. Okay. So this is need for research, exploration, describe, diagnose, hypothesis, induction, and deductions. This is a problem not similar to science. Okay. So some of your funding is not is totally cannot be proven from the previous study. So that is with a major contribution if you come up with your own finding. Okay. So uncontrollable variable. Okay. So that's why we need to use the dimensionless analysis approach. So you can control your variable, so you can finish within the time frame. So human tendency, for example, you have problem with your respondents, okay, or you have problem with the technicians, or you have problem with your supervisor. So they also contribute to your research problems. Time and money, okay. So normally for master project, it's not required for a lot of money, okay. So time within 6 months, you should finish your study. Okay, lack of computerizations. I guess you doesn't need to have to use a very complicated or sophisticated software. I guess you know how, what software that you use for your master project, so there will be no problems. Okay, lack of scientific training in the method research. Okay, that's why we try to help you, okay, to identify what method and to show you the scientific systematically way to conduct your research. Okay, the rest you need to rely on your supervisor. Okay, supervisor is the main important person for you in order to complete your master research, master project. Okay, so this is the flow. Okay, you can go through after this. Okay, we have define problems. Okay, literature review is very important. Okay, so you have identify your problem, then you start to dig what is the important literature related to your problems. Okay, so then you start to have a guess, but in your chapter 1 it's not very important. Okay, but you can come up with your own guess based on the previous literature review. Okay, so then you can design for your methodology, data collections, analyze your result, interpret and prepare for your reports. Okay, so this is the cycle. You can go around again. Okay. Okay, so I will try to be quick. Okay, so you can read this one. Okay. Because this is more related to a general knowledge only. Okay, source of problems. Okay. So reading is more related to the scientific manuscript or journal. Okay. So exposure to the field situation. If you have a problem in your site and then you come up with your own solution, so that will be much more better. Okay. Because for my student case, okay, so he has a several number of maintain lot test result. Okay, so the cost for maintain lot test is around 100 to 300,000 ringgit. So it's very difficult to have this kind of result. So based on this experience, okay, so he analyzed all the result from his previous work. So then he come up with his own relations. Okay. Then when he submit to the journal, okay, most of the reviewer, okay, will appreciate the result obtained from the field work, okay, because it's very expensive and very difficult to carry out. So if you have a lot of what we call as a field result, okay, or site result, so you need to gather it and then try to analyze it. Okay. Okay. Okay, I will skip some of the slides because you can easily understand it. Okay. Okay, so this is the good research problems. This is system detection, which is the problems that you want to investigate. Okay. So then you analyze the situation, then you define the problem, state the research objective. Okay. Okay. So that is all for the part 1. Okay. So can we have a break for 15 minutes? Okay. So we will continue at 4:15. Okay. And I try to finish it by 5. Okay.
Okay, Doctor, sure.
Okay. So I will stop. Okay. Actually, I have recorded my lecture, so I will share with you later on.